We have some breaking news on the investigation into yesterday's deadly shooting at a Paris newspaper. A Homeland Security official tells NBC News that the two French shooting suspects, who are still at large, brothers Saeed and Sharif Kouachi, have been in the U.S. terrorism database and on the U.S. no-fly list for, quote, years. Just hours ago, the Department of Justice announced that Attorney General Eric Holder will travel to Paris on Sunday to attend an international meeting to address terrorist threats. That meeting was scheduled in response to yesterday's attack. Here in the U.S., the mass shooting is offering the first test for a Republican-held Congress, one that took control just one day before the terrorist attacks. Earlier today, the man recently re-elected House Speaker John Boehner was asked how the attack will affect the looming battle over funding the Department of Homeland Security.
The issue isn't about funding the Department of Homeland Security. Members of Congress support funding the department. But you cannot continue to allow the president to go around the Congress and go around the law and take unilateral action like he has.
Joining me now is the Democratic representative from California's 28th District, newly appointed ranking member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman, thanks for joining me. Congratulations on the new position.
Thank you very much.
So let me first with the breaking news here that DHS officials tell NBC News that the two suspects, the two Kouachi brothers, have been in the U.S. no-fly list, the U.S. terrorism database, for years. What was your reaction to that? And have French officials, did they miss warning signs?
Well, you know, I can't confirm that that's the case, but frankly, it's not surprising that they would be on the list. If you have, for example, one of the brothers that was convicted of trying to recruit people to join the jihad against American troops in Iraq, you would hope that they would be on our list and not allowed to fly to the United States. So not a surprising result there. In terms of whether the French missed something, I think it's very early to make those kind of conclusions. Clearly, these were people who were known to French authorities. At the same time, the Boston Marathon bombers were known to American authorities. Some of the individuals, the assailants in Canada, Australia, were also known. These were known wolves as opposed to lone wolves. But the fact that you know people are of concern doesn't mean that you can surveil them 24 hours a day. And I think it's way too early to say whether the French missed something here.
When we talk about surveillance, Michael Hayden had some choice sort of thoughts on what dragnet surveillance produces or does not, and whether it should be increased in France, a country that has been highly skeptical publicly of American dragnet surveillance. Let's play what Michael Hayden had to say this morning on Morning Joe.
I was talking to you guys about 12 months ago about these massive amounts of metadata that NSA held in storage. That metadata doesn't look all that scary this morning, and I wouldn't be surprised if the French services pick up cell phones associated with the attack and ask the Americans, where have you seen these phones active globally?
Congressman, what do you make of that contention that metadata doesn't look all that scary this morning?
Well, I think the former director really misses the point. The point is that the American government doesn't need to hold all that private data. In circumstances like this, we can go to the phone companies and say, what numbers do you have connected to these numbers? And that better protects the privacy of the American people, but it also gives us access to this information very quickly at times when we need it. So that's a better way to do it and balance privacy and security. So I think this is really a false argument he's been making. And unfortunately, often we see in the event of these tragedies, they're being used to propel arguments that really don't find support otherwise and shouldn't find support here either.
Let me ask you about funding for DHS. Republicans have had a curious position on the funding of DHS now that the rubber is meeting the proverbial road in terms of the deadline that looms for DHS funding, which expires next month. We have news that there is a draft report released about exactly what the Republicans are going to try and pass vis-a-vis DHS funding, which excludes funding for the executive memoranda released by the president on immigration, or DHS on immigration, that defunds effectively an executive action that isn't in fact funded by Congress. I guess I'm confused, and I wonder if you can shed a little bit more light on what exactly the Republican position is today on funding the Department of Homeland Security.
Well, I think the Republican position today is let's do something symbolic, not something that we think it will have a practical consequence or a desirable one. It's very much in line, frankly, with the litigation against the president that we saw over the Affordable Care Act. Nobody thought that litigation was really going to go anywhere or be successful. I think they're looking to make a point on the Homeland Security bill, even though there's not really a practical way to do that, and I don't think there's going to be much appetite on the Republican side of the aisle to defund an agency that's responsible for protecting the country. So I don't think it's workable. I don't think it's going to be successful, except to the extent they feel they can placate their base by doing this.
But doesn't this further enrage a base to say, okay, we're doing something symbolic, does nothing measurably? I mean, we're trying to defund an executive action that we can actually defund, but that should be enough to make you guys quiet down. I mean, doesn't that just exacerbate tension that already exists between the establishment wing of the party and the insurgent right-wing base?
Well, it certainly can, but at the same time, that's been their formula for the last couple of years. They've gone through symbolic vote after symbolic vote, votes to repeal or overturn Obamacare about 50 times now, actions to take issue with the president's executive orders. And I don't think anyone believes these things or believed that they were going to be successful. Whether they're mollifying enough to the base, probably the leadership view on the GOP side is they may not be, but it's the best that we can do.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you for your time on a busy day. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex.